I made a pause challenge because my brain is broken. I tried to design a couple characters recently, and it was painful because my stupid brain is an extremely rigid perfectionist that makes me hyperfixate on tiny details that really don't matter, like picking out the perfect color for some tiny button on some character's sleeve, or inching the arm over 5 pixels at a time until it looks just right. Well, the only way to get better at something is to practice, and I thought, if I want to practice character design, what if I did a pause OC challenge? If it's for a challenge, I feel like it takes away a little bit of the pressure because it's okay if it's not the most perfect character ever, or if it's cringe. It's just a randomly generated character for a silly little challenge, and I never have to draw them again after this. So I thought I had finally cornered my slow as molasses perfectionist brain, and it still ended up taking me over a month to complete this challenge because, first of all, after watching a ton of pause challenges on TikTok and YouTube, I wasn't really feeling any of them. So I decided to make my own. And then, instead of designing 1 character, I decided to design 3! Because apparently I hate myself! And because YouTube is a platform upon which we love to document our suffering, I'm going to take you through the whole process of designing my own pause challenge and 3 randomly generated characters. Disclaimer. This pause challenge is extremely self-indulgent. I just filled it up with things I like, so if you feel like there's something missing or the options are too similar, too bad, it's my pause challenge, I can do what I want. On that note, if you are interested in trying it out, I posted it to my YouTube shorts. I'll put a link to that in the description, and do feel free to tag me at MollyPopArt on most socials. I'd love to see it. Also, if you come up with an idea for a character that doesn't match every single category you roll, that is 100% okay. I do not care. It's just a tool for inspiration. Lastly, I heavily based this challenge on my favorite one that I saw, this random OC generator on Instagram created by, their handle used to be Ghosty Pig. I think they changed it to Rotten Strawberry. I will also put a link to that in the description, as well as a couple other sources I stole from, which I will also be crediting as we go along. So first we have species. It's optional. If you don't like what you pull, you do not have to keep it. We have human, vampire, robot, magical girl, and alien. Next, we have some options for skin tones, then body types: short, average, tall, plus size, muscular, pear-shaped, and androgynous. Then for clothes, some pause challenges have preset outfits, but I wanted full control over the outfit design, so I just threw in some aesthetics I thought were fun. We have Y2K Grunge, Vertiger Arrow, Shoujo Girl, Cyber Gamer, Coconut Girl, Downtown Girl, Hip Hop or Streetwear, Vintage Diner, Vaporwave, Circus, Ninja, and Amakaji Gyaru. For colors, these are just base colors. Feel free to tweak the saturation and value, and it doesn't even have to be the main color in the design, it's just a starting point for inspiration. The link here is to a free graphic design course called Baseline. They had a neat article about how to choose a color palette for like a brand kit, and credit, I actually stole these colors from the color wheel they use on their website, so feel free to check that out, link in the description. Now, accessory options, we have microphone, headphones, glasses, tattoos, jewelry, mask, freckles, mole, band-aids, scar, painted nails, fangs, and pointy ears. Then for hairstyles, we have super short, bob, medium, long, very long, braids, ponytail, half up, pigtails, buns, and asymmetrical. Also, none of these do you have to follow the exact hairstyle or accessory in the picture, I just wanted to have a visual. Now, last but not least, some people are able to come up with a backstory for a character just based on what they pull in the pause challenge, but I personally wanted a little more structure, so I added categories for character trait and story goal. For character traits, we have awkward, clumsy, lazy, shy, vain, arrogant, short-tempered, timid, grumpy, ambitious, affectionate, aggressive, loud, antisocial, apathetic, oversensitive, violent, and scatterbrained. Okay, I know a lot of these are similar. I just put down traits I thought were fun. I warned you that this was self-indulgent. Also, I know a lot of them are like flaws. Hopefully this should help keep the character from turning into a Mary Sue with no flaws that's boring to write about. And finally, for story goals, I literally just ripped these from some website called 119 Character Motivations from CharacterHub.com, and from skimming this book series, the Writers Helping Writers Thesaurus series by Angela Ackerman and Becca Puglisi. Sorry if I said their names wrong. Links to both of those will also be in the description. There's a lot, so I'm not gonna read all of them, but I tried to pick goals that were vague enough that you still have a lot of freedom with brainstorming your backstory. And with that, that is the pause challenge, and you know what that means.
Let's go gambling! Aw, dang it.
Now, usually when people do pause challenges, they base their characters on what they pulled the first time. I did not do that. I sat on the floor of my room for like an hour and pulled like 50 different options and picked my favorite 3. I told you my brain was broken. Look, it's my pause challenge and I can do what I want, and I want to use a prompt that would actually inspire me, something that I would actually have fun making, because like I said, I would be spending quite a bit of quality time with these characters in the near future. So the first character pull I picked was species alien, this skin tone, body type average, aesthetic is gamer, base color pink, extra microphone, super short hair, trait is oversensitive, and story goal, achieve a level of mastery in a particular skill or discipline. So the idea this sparked for me was, she's an alien who's come to Earth, but one of her abilities is she has extremely sensitive hearing, to the point where she can basically never leave her soundproofed apartment because people are loud, man. But the flip side of that is, her heightened sensitivity gives her an even deeper appreciation for music. She can hear all the tiny little distinctions between different notes and sounds. So her goal is to try to become an online independent music artist, releasing her own songs and somehow trying to connect with the Earthlings, all from behind her computer screen. So for each of these 3 characters, I could break my character design process basically into 4 steps: research, thumbnails, colors, and final design. The first step, research, is basically me just surfing all over the internet, gathering ideas and a butt ton of references. I always use a lot of references when I draw, not usually quite this many since I'm designing them from scratch, but this video will give you a little peek into my usual reference gathering process. So for finding references, I usually use either a good old-fashioned internet search, and sometimes I'll put my search terms into my bestie, Japanese Google Translate, because often that helps me find references that are more tailored towards an anime art style, or Pinterest. I kind of hate Pinterest though, so I mainly use it for general aesthetics, and for more specific stuff, it's DuckDuckGo all the way. The software I use to organize my references is Microsoft PowerPoint. Maybe a little random, but first of all, I use it because my mom just lets me use her account. If I had to pay for it myself, I'd probably use something else. But probably the main reason I use it is this little guy right here. I know it's grouped in with their AI feature that I attempted to disable, but I'm pretty sure I've been using design suggestions since before the AI tech boom of 2023. Basically all I use it for is, if you drag and drop up to 6 images onto a slide and click a button, it automatically spaces them out for you. And again, since I frequently gather hundreds of slides worth of reference images, it saves me a lot of time not having to space them out manually. When I'm gathering references, I usually grab as many as possible, internet surfing as fast as I can first, then go back later and select my favorite references to organize for my final project. Throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what sticks, if you will. For our alien singer character, I started by gathering a bunch of streetwear outfit inspiration. You can see I tended to gravitate towards outfits with long, baggy sweatpants. Also, short hair reference, headphones, color inspiration, and other random images that reminded me of this character. Once I've gathered my initial references, it's time for step 2, thumbnailing. For this project, I tried something a little different. I watched a ton of character design tutorials, and some of them, instead of jumping into thumbnails straight away like I usually would, started by just doing silhouettes. One piece of character design advice you kinda hear a lot is the importance of a good silhouette, an iconic silhouette. Can you recognize the character just based on their silhouette? I wasn't so sure about just doing silhouettes at first. Now that I've tried it, I don't know if I'd want to do it any other way. Character design can be so overwhelming, especially for my broken little brain, when you're trying to make all of these decisions from scratch. And I felt like deciding on the silhouette first, and then the whole design, was like breaking up the process in half and making each step smaller and more manageable. I actually did all my thumbnailing for the 3 characters in my sketchbook. So, it's time for a mini sketchbook tour. Hi, welcome to my sketchbook. So, here are my initial silhouettes for our alien girl. For a while, I was thinking about giving her a hoodie, but something felt kinda off, and I realized I feel like a hoodie is something you might wear not just for protection from the elements, but maybe to kinda hide yourself from other people, especially with the hood. And if she's by herself and alone in her temperature-controlled apartment in her own little safe space, I don't know if she'd really feel the need to wear something like a hoodie. All this to say, I decided no hoodie, and I thought it'd be fun to give her like big chunky house slippers. At the end of the session, I was thinking I was gonna go with this silhouette, but when I came back the next day, I decided to go with this one with the crop pants. It has more negative space around the ankle area, which I think looks more interesting. So with the silhouette decided, I already knew basically what she was wearing: headphones, tank top, baggy pants, and slippers. So I grabbed a few more references to help me visualize them better, and I started doing the normal thumbnails. Disclaimer, my thumbnails tend to be very shorthandish. They make sense to me in my head, but they might look kind of sketchy to an outside viewer. Also, since I already have the main silhouette decided on, there's not a ton of variation between these iterations. Mostly like the shape of the bangs or the graphics on the shirt, those little details. But in the end, I decided to go with this thumbnail with these pants. I took a picture of my thumbnail and brought it into my drawing program, and now it's time for step 3, picking colors. Or so I thought. Again, in some of the tutorials I saw, instead of jumping to colors straight away, they do value studies. Basically doing a black and white version and deciding which part of the design will be lighter colors, which ones will be darker colors. Having clear values can make a design more readable. And again, I don't really do value studies in my normal stuff, so I wasn't so sure. But let me tell you, I tried jumping into colors straight away here and I went, nope, I'm doing values first. Again, it's splitting the process in half, doing the values first and then the colors, which makes it slightly less intimidating. So once I had a value study, it was time for colors. One tip I saw with picking colors is having a color hierarchy, basically having a main color, a secondary color, and an accent color. I had already gone through my color inspiration reference and picked out my favorites, and I settled on a color scheme of purple as my main color, pink as my secondary color, and maybe some pops of teal for accents. My color picking process generally ends up mainly being trial and error, but I do find that my color problems often do get solved just by adding more of the main color and less of the accent colors. Who would have thought? And finally, it's step 4. It's time to flesh out my color thumbnail into a final character design, which you've been watching the time-lapse of in the background. I did one last final organization of my reference PowerPoint to help me know what everything would look like, filling in more references where needed. Some fun little details I added. This pendant, I like the look of it. Maybe it's like a special piece of jewelry that the aliens from her home planet wear when they come of age. The graphic on her tank top says Celesta, hope I said that right, which sounds like celestial, like aliens, and is the name of a musical instrument. And her wrist remote. I did a little research, and I did not know this, but apparently if you wear hearing aids, you can get a remote control for them, so you can adjust the volume and even connect it to like a Bluetooth device. So I imagine her wrist remote is a control panel for her specially designed headphones for her hearing. And after mentally bashing my head against a wall trying to figure out how to draw said headphones, we have our final design. I didn't really do any rendering because I think character reference sheets that don't have shading look cool. No, honestly, this drawing took over 10 hours and I just really wanted to be done at that point. The second character poll I picked was species vampire, this skin tone, body type muscular, aesthetic is coconut girl, base color yellow, extra is mask, half up hair, trait is vain, and story goal is also achieve a level of mastery in a particular skill or discipline. So what came to mind for me with this character is, her goal is to be a professional surfer, and maybe with the mask, she's trying to compete in the Tokyo 2020 Olympics or some kind of pro surfing contest during the Panini times. I didn't end up using the vampire, and I don't know if I leaned super hard into her being vain. And, spoiler alert, I ended up dropping the color yellow from the final design. Hey, like I said, this is just a tool for inspiration, it's my pause challenge, and if I want to break the rules, gosh darn it, I can. So, step 1, research. I found lots of coconut girl outfits and did a little research on surfers, specifically black female pro surfers. I ended up taking a lot of inspiration for my design from Neek Miller, who's a professional surfer and model who lives in Hawaii. Also, some references for hairstyles. I had to do a half up. I ended up liking this kind of braids and a half up bun. Now, let's jump back into my sketchbook for the thumbnails. Here are some silhouettes for our surfer girl. Trying to decide how long to make her hair. Now, on this page, it might not look like it, but I had a tiny little existential crisis. So remember how I told you my brain feels like it needs the character design to match this original vision in my head? Well, my original vision for this character was more like wearing like a one-piece swimsuit, maybe like a rash guard, and maybe like an athletic warm-up jacket if she's gonna be competing professionally. But the problem was, designing a basic one-piece swimsuit just seems so boring to me. Like, the reason I got excited about this character was because of the coconut girl aesthetic and like all the possible top and shorts combinations. I just thought it would be cute. And I know it sounds dumb, but I was kind of forced to choose between like my vision or what would be fun. Spoiler alert, after my unnecessary angsting, I picked the fun route, top and shorts. But in the end, I ended up combining both ideas. I'll show you the thumbnails. I had been thinking of giving her like street clothes, jean shorts, but I was like, what if I gave her swim shorts? She could still wear this to a competition, you know? Well, with that little crisis momentarily averted, let's jump into values and colors, where I ran into another fun little crisis. So first of all, I had a vague idea of the color scheme before I jumped into values. I was thinking pink and some combination of orange, yellow, green, and light blue. So what I should have done is take the color scheme I had in mind, turn those colors into black and white, and then use those values when I was doing the value studies. What I did instead, I had used a basic 5-tone palette of white, black, and 3 midtones when designing the first character, and it turned out fine. But see, none of the colors in this color scheme are anywhere close to being as dark as this black. So I didn't realize until I had already finished this value study that to match it, I would have to turn this pink all the way down to this ugly dark red, which is not at all what I wanted. Yeah, it sounds kind of obvious now. But instead of admitting defeat and redoing the value studies, I went, I'll just try any random colors, and blindly surged on doing color studies. Up until the moment when I took a step back and I realized, oh crud, it's Dora the Explorer. Like, literally, the pink shirt and the orange shorts, it's Dora the Explorer. And I was like, no, I do not want this to visually remind people of Dora the Explorer. I gotta do something. And that's what made me finally relent and go back to do a few more value studies. So remember what I said before about more main color, less accent color to fix color problems? Well, I ended up deciding to do light pink shorts instead of orange. Crisis averted. I do love me some super bright saturation cranked to 100% colors, but they can be so hard to work with, and in the end I'm still not even sure if I'm 100% happy with how it turned out. But the only way to get better at colors is to experiment, and this was definitely an experiment. Moving on, with the color thumbnail done, it's time to finalize the character design. Like before, I went to my reference PowerPoint one more time to organize everything for the final sketch. I was trying to draw this kind of walking on the beach pose, but I struggled a lot with it, and I still don't love how it turned out, but we are trying new things. Speaking of new things I've never tried, here's some reference for parting box braids. This was my first time drawing box braids, and I had no idea what I was doing. What ended up helping me the most was watching box braid hair tutorials on YouTube. I was also kind of nervous about drawing the floral pattern on her shorts because, a surface designer, I am not. So grabbing more references for like early 2000s style floral patterns and embroidered jean shorts helped me come up with a design. And here she is, the final design for our surfer girl. And last but not least, here's the third character poll I picked. Species, vampire again. This skin tone. Body type tall. Shoujo girl aesthetic. Base color red. Painted nails. Bob haircut. Trait affectionate. And story goal, dealing with being pressured by family. I felt like I got really lucky with this character. I felt like everything kind of lined up in a way. I like the contrast of her being this super dangerous vampire, but being like this super sweet girl. She wouldn't hurt a fly. She loves to wear cute, fluffy shoujo girl clothes. I thought her story goal, maybe she falls in love with a human boy, but her vampire parents are trying to pressure her into marrying another vampire and preserving the blood lineage or whatever. But she just wants to have her sweet, fluffy shoujo girl romance. Just leave her alone. Is it obvious that I've been on a little bit of a shoujo manga kick lately? Could you tell? Okay. So I started by gathering lots of shoujo girl aesthetic outfits, also some references of tall women for proportions, bob haircuts, anime vampires, some inspiration for colors. Oh look, it's Yor from Spy Family. I feel like her character is a little bit similar in that it's also that kind of contrast of like, Yor's super dangerous, she's a deadly assassin, but I would say she also has a very sweet and gentle side to her personality, and I just like that contrast. And she also has that kind of black and red color scheme I was thinking of. Okay, time for thumbnails. Let's do one more little mini sketchbook tour. Hi, so again, I started with silhouettes. I was trying out a couple different bobs. Her hairstyle ended up being very much inspired by Hotaru from A Condition Called Love. So I was kind of struggling. Her age, I decided to make her about 19, young college age, I guess, because I'm kind of sick of every single anime being set in high school. Can we have one that's maybe not for once? Thank you. But I still wanted to make her on the young side. Maybe she's still a little naive about life, so I think about 19. With these designs, these are kind of like coat, hat, skirt, boots. I was struggling because some of these were not giving the vibe I wanted. Some of these I thought were giving like office worker in her 30s, which, okay, I mean, honestly, are there office workers that dress like this? Probably not, but I guess it just felt too mature. I think short hair can tend to look more mature, so it was kind of an easy pitfall. For a while, I was thinking about giving her a cape. At that point, I was thinking about maybe making her like a bit of an Ojo-sama character, and she's always being dragged along and pushed around by her rich vampire family. And at the end of the session, I totally thought I was gonna go with this design, but I took a break, I slept on it, and I realized, first of all, it was starting to give like stuck-up rich lady walking her frou-frou toy poodle or something, which is not what I wanted. And I didn't really want her to feel like a passive character. Like, when you're wearing a cape like this, your arms are kind of restricted, right? So you become kind of passive and helpless, like you can't really do things for yourself and other people have to handle things for you. That's a really long-winded explanation of how I decided to give her a jacket with sleeves instead. I will say, taking breaks and coming back the next day with fresh eyes is probably the best thing I could do throughout this process to fight my perfectionist brain, because not only does it give my subconscious some extra time to work on it, but when I force myself to take a break and come back, I can say, what's the little detail I was hyper-fixating on? Does it really matter, or is it time to, maybe move on to something else? So yeah, take breaks. That's my number one tip if your brain is anywhere near as broken as mine. So anyway, I gave her a tiny purse because I like the contrast of tall person, tiny bag, and added some negative space between the top of the jacket and her hair, and this is the silhouette I went with. So once again, I gathered a few more references and I tried out some thumbnails. This first one I wrote too childish, like something about her face just looked too childish. Again, I was struggling with not making her look too mature, but also not making her look like a little kid, and I didn't really like her top. So I tried again, and again, and this turtleneck made me think of, I wish I could say I thought of this from the start, what if I gave her a scarf? Especially because she's a vampire. What if as a vampire she's a little sensitive about showing her neck? Maybe in vampire culture it's considered a little vulgar to show your neck and they tend to dress with their necks hidden. And I felt like it added that missing something to the top half of her outfit, so I wish I could say I thought of it from the start, but I didn't. I was also finicking a little bit with the shape of her bangs. It's interesting, I feel like having blunt bangs versus having just a little bit of side swept bangs can create a different impression. So I ended up going with this thumbnail. So then I picked values and colors. I don't have the most to say, you know the drill. One thing I thought was interesting was one of the tutorials I watched, they were talking about color schemes like complementary, split complementary, triadic, etc. And they said Darth Vader has a monochromatic red color scheme, because black could just be a very, very dark, desaturated version of red. So yeah, I think this girl has a monochromatic red color scheme because the black, the red, the white, the pinks, the grays, and the reddish browns, they could all be various shades and tints of red. I just thought that was interesting. So finally, I organized my references again, and it was time to finalize the final character design. I actually spent a little time designing her face in my sketchbook first. A thing about me, I love big sparkly shoujo eyes, so if we're making this a shoujo protagonist character, we're going all the way with those huge sparkly early 2000s eyes. I love it. I also gave her fangs and long sharp fingernails because she's a vampire, and oh hi, it's Hinata from Haikyuu! What's he doing here? So, the reason he's here is, so I watched some of Haikyuu with my dad. We haven't finished it, we got like halfway through the second season or something, but whenever we watch it, he keeps saying that the characters are elves. Okay, I keep trying to tell him that it's just the art style, it has this really sharp shape language, okay? But he always says, they're elves, and I'm like, they're not elves, it's just the art style! But in spite of myself, it ended up inspiring me, because I was like, well, I want to give her pointy ears since she's a vampire, but I don't want them to be over-the-top fruit-ridden ears. So I was like, Haikyuu! I'm gonna take some inspiration from Haikyuu's character design to make them sharp, pointy ears! So yeah. Thanks, Dad. I procrastinated so hard on drawing the floral pattern on her skirt. I guess patterns are kind of hard for me, but references always help. And with that, she's all done. Here we go, our final character design. And with that, the month draws to a close, and the challenge is finally complete. Except, I still haven't really settled on names for any of these characters, so feel free to drop any suggestions in the comments below, and which of these 3 characters ended up being your favorite. Again, if you want to try my pause challenge for yourself, link is in the description and my YouTube shorts, and feel free to tag me at MollyPopArt on most socials. This is my first long form video that I've made in like a year. I usually post shorts, but I've been wanting to try to make one again for a while now. But I needed a project with a large enough scope that I could reasonably yap about it for half an hour-ish. So it's been a long month and I'm a little burnt out, not gonna lie. So I'm gonna go take a break now. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, and I will see you when I see you. Goodbye.